Today on the channel, an RC helicopter review from Flywing. This is the brand new V3 FW450. What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. We're gonna do a review today of the FW450 V3. This has 450mm blades on here. It has a huge beastie canopy, and most importantly, this helicopter has GPS stability and return to home on here, and it will fly inverted with a flick of a switch. Without further ado, let's go ahead outside now and let's fly this beast of an RC helicopter with all kinds of cool modes. All right guys, we're at the field with the FW450 V3. So let's go ahead and put it down. Let me show you the switches on the transmitter and let's do some flying. Let me show you the modes: stability, GPS, return to home, figure eights, orbit mode, and hopefully the inverted mode. If not, you have to go into the software and activate it. We'll see if mine's activated today in this review. Let's go ahead and let's get it up in the air. Let me show you how to arm it as well. The transmitter is a FlySky transmitter. It's the same transmitter that we've seen before in previous FW450s. No change here with that. It does have all the same switches across the top. It has stop and run here. It has normal flight mode, 0 fly, and 8 fly here, which is gonna be your figure eights, as well as the home point, return to home point at the very top of this switch right here, GPS mode and full 3D mode. I do recommend taking off in GPS mode, and if you're gonna fly 3D, land it, put it in 3D, and then take off again. And also it has normal and invert switch here. We're gonna keep that all the way up there because we don't wanna have that pressed down when we take off. You wanna make sure that all your switches are up. Once the transmitter's on, you can put it down into GPS mode, and then you can turn on the heli. So let's go ahead and press both buttons at the same time. We'll turn it on. See the FlySky logo right there, and you can see your computer radio is loaded up. Now all we have to do is plug in the battery, wait for about a minute and a half, and we can take off. All right guys, so you should have your heli down. It should take maybe a minute to 2 minutes to load up the GPS. Once it's loaded up, you'll see a solid green light. Once you have a flashing light, you can go ahead and switch in the run position, and it should start to slowly spool up. Now we want to let this helicopter come up to a good head speed before I push up on the throttle stick to make it come up off the ground. Now it looks good. You can go ahead and take off, and you'll see that it has a nice solid hover. It should come up to about 2 meters on the first takeoff. Now you can see it's hands off, it's hovering on its own. If it seems to be drifting, you can land it and restart the process again. Now it seems to have a pretty nice solid lock. Let's go ahead and do some flying, and we'll test out these modes on this transmitter. All right, we're just gonna do another takeoff here. I'm gonna show you how it comes up off the ground. So give it about 20 seconds before you go ahead and hit the throttle. And once we're ready, looks like a good head speed. Don't come off the ground with a low throttle, by the way. Go ahead and push up. It's gonna bounce up to about 2 meters or so. You can bring it down for a minute, let it settle out with the tail towards you. That's just gonna give it a good, nice GPS positioning hold. If you let go of the sticks at any time, this heli is just gonna chill right there in that one spot and not move. If you see that the head is shaking a little bit, it means that the blades are a little bit out of line. So we're gonna bring it up. We're gonna check out the alignment of the blades. It looks okay. It could be a little bit better, but let's go ahead and do some forward flight. Right now, I like this canopy because it's white and I can really see it against the backdrop back there. Depending on where you fly, a nice bright canopy really helps you to distinguish like your orientation if you're a beginner. So I'm gonna go ahead and full stick forward here. That's full stick forward right there. Lost a little bit of altitude. If you lose altitude, give it a little bit of throttle and that'll bring it up. Now it's full stick forward again. Not super fast. Anticipate those turns as always before you hit a tree. Let's try to do a nice hard bank. Nice. I can see that tail let go a little bit, and I can hear that gyro working. We don't have any type of torque tube in the back of this tail. It's just a brushless motor, so I'm gonna say this is probably not like an advanced 3D heli, but more of a heli just to kind of enjoy flying line of sight, really. And that's what I like the most about it. Now let's bring it up, get some altitude, and let's try out one of those modes, okay? We'll see if it'll go into the orbit mode which they call zero fly. So we're gonna go ahead down from normal mode now and down into zero fly. And it's gonna do a nose in hover circle around the point that I was pointing at. So wherever the face of the heli is, it's gonna be doing a circle around that point. And I can stop it at any time by going back to normal mode. So we did a complete circle, that looks good. And it's gonna go back into GPS positioning. That's pretty cool. So now let's go ahead and try that figure 8 fly. Now it's gonna turn the tail automatically doing a figure 8. Not even like say 20 feet off the ground. So it'll do these different modes a little bit lower than it will the inverted mode. And it might not go into inverted mode today during this flight test because I might have to activate it in the H1 software first. That's kind of a safety thing that Flywing has built into these helis, which is kind of good for you. And if you're a beginner and you accidentally do that and you don't expect it, it's not going to do anything crazy, but you do need to be, it says 10 meters off the ground. That's about 30 feet up before I can activate the invert switch. So let's go ahead and put it back into normal mode now. Let's bring it back around over here and let's get it up in front of us. You know, maybe it's going to go into inverted mode and maybe not. We'll put it side to so you guys can see it. And I'd say that's about high enough. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the inverted mode and there it goes. It's in the inverted mode and it did it that time on the aileron axis. So what I want you to see here is pretty cool because if you're flying 3D, everything is opposite. Down is actually up with the throttle. And old timers will tell you down is good and up is bad. So we can come down low enough here to really cut some weeds. Look at that, all the way to the ground there. I'm gonna flip my invert switch again and it goes right side up. Now, a purist who flies 3D, they will tell you that that's pretty dangerous for a beginner to learn this way, honestly. It's something that you really want to practice on the simulator. Flying RC heli inverted, it's one of the holy grails of learning how to fly 3D. So that's something that you really should practice on your own on a simulator before you destroy your 3D heli. And again, this one's not really a stick banging 3D heli with a torque tube or a belt drive tail on here. So that's important to know about this heli. It is what it is. It's a fun flying heli. That's what I'll call it, a fun flyer. Even though it really does look like a full out like 3D heli, I still do like the sound of those blades, you guys. Super nice. You know, and you can also go into the software and you can change the angle of attack, make it fly a little bit faster. And I feel like this V3 is more locked in than the other ones. The flight controller and the firmware has kind of come a long way in the last couple of years, and I reviewed every single version of these helis. So this is the third to fourth one that I've had. I believe they've sent me about 4 of these now. You can go back and watch our other reviews on the Flywing helis. We also do reviews on OMP hobby models as well. If you're into helis, you can go back and check out my reviews on those. And originally I was a heli guy. But it's cool to see that that thing unlocked and was able to do some inverted flying. How terrifying is that? Pretty wild, right? So if you want to land this bad boy, what you want to do, if you're a beginner, just go ahead and give yourself some space between the heli and your landing pad. I always like to use the landing pad. It just gives me a visual to bring the heli in on. You're going to bring it in tail first. So bring the tail around facing you, lower it down, get it nice and low, stabilize. This is going to take a little practice to get it right over top of your landing pad. So here we come in. Hopefully it doesn't move that landing pad too much. It's not staked down, so I'm praying about that. We're going to go ahead and try to land right on the H. Up. I hear a little bit of tail rotor there hitting that landing pad. You want to switch to stop, and that will kill the throttle in the motor and the blades. And go ahead and let that heli rotor head come to a stop, and then you can go ahead and unplug your XT60 on the FW450. But now let's go ahead and practice some of that fun 3D mode. Let's fly it in 3D without GPS hold or stability or anything. This is just pure
gyro assisted 3D mode, but when I say gyro, I mean just it helps hold the tail straight, but it does not give you stability in 3D mode. So that you need to know. Also, if you go inverted in 3D mode, the controls are going to be reversed. So you need to know that before you try to go inverted in 3D mode and crash it for the first time. Don't be that guy with your FW450. Let's go ahead and slap a camera under there. I'm going to use my Insta360 Go 2, and we'll record some onboard footage for the 3D flying part of this review. All right, guys, it's always good to land this helicopter and then put it in 3D mode before you take off. I'm going to do that now, and we'll go ahead and take off in 3D mode. And now we have no GPS lock. You can kind of see it's like leaning to one way or the other there. And it's still kind of coming up to its full head speed. I wouldn't say this is probably 100% head speed. I think it's probably locked into something to like 80 or so. Doesn't sound like it's given the full kind of horsepower of this heli. But right now, again, like we're flying at full manual here. And a lot of times when I'm flying like this, I like to keep my finger on that kind of what we call throttle cut switch, just in case if I was going to crash, I want to hit throttle cut before I hit the ground. That takes the power out of the blades. So at this point, we're recording some onboard footage. You can hopefully see that right now in this review. And I'm just working on my orientation here because it's been a while since I've flown like a full 3D mode RC heli. So this is a lot of fun for me, practicing my figure eights, working on my orientation. You know, I'm not a big 3D pilot, stick banger. I'm more of a sport flyer. I can do mild TikToks, which this heli, it's really not made for some serious stick banging right there. Lost a little bit of altitude right over top of that grass. It's not super hot today, so hot air will kind of suck down any RC airplane or heli close to the ground. Kind of gives that like ground effect, they call it. So let's go up and let's try some maneuver here. All right, looks like we have our first flip underway. That was cool. And if you get kind of disoriented, you can kind of spin the tail around. That kind of helps you in 3D mode. Let's bring it back up and do another flip. I could really practice this a lot on the simulator. That was good. That was looking good. So it's pretty smooth. I would say it's pretty nimble. Could practice some nice big rainbows. Seems to be good. Let's do a forward one. Nice. Backwards. You press down, it's going to bring you up. So that's one thing you need to know there about 3D mode. Remember, down is good, up is expensive. You will kill your heli. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back over to the landing pad now. And guys, let's go back to the shop. Let's look at this heli on the bench. Let me give you my full honest opinion on this heli, and let's talk about the features, the good stuff and the bad stuff. I have noticed some things that I love about it, and I've noticed some things that I don't really care about. So let's talk about all those things on the bench. Here we go.
Guys, in the box you get the RC heli, the heli storage case, a 4S 5000 milliamp battery pack, one battery tray with a Velcro strap, one FlySky transmitter. It requires 4 AA batteries, a 3 and a 4S LiPo charger, the instruction manual, a USB cable for connecting your H1 flight controller, a bind plug and a bind pin here. And Flywing also gives you a set of metric hex drivers. You should really go over all the bolts on the heli before you do your maiden flight. Flywing drastically redesigned the canopy on the FW450L V3. It looks a lot better in my opinion. It looks more aggressive. It looks more like a 3D stick banging type of heli, something like a Goblin or an Align heli, and it looks pretty fast just sitting on the bench. I do love the design. I also like the fact that they have a front opening canopy design that allows you to get the battery in and out on the battery tray for this heli. One drawback for me, one con, was that my tab on this side broke. It has 2 tabs here, one on the top and one on the side that still hold it in place, but now when I fly mine, I put a little piece of tape on both sides of the canopy. If that happens to you, make sure you do that so this doesn't come open in flight. Now the battery sits on a tray very similar to larger 700 class style helis, and it comes in and out just like that. It has a little tab that locks into place, and to release it you push this tab down And when you plug this in, take your XT60, plug it into your 60 amp ESC, and that will start the startup process. And this time in V3, it looks like we have a larger brushless motor and a single Allen bolt holding on the much larger tail blade. This gives it a little more authority and response in the control, especially if you're flying 3D. You want a little more tail hold in those big maneuvers. This should do a little bit better than the previous version of this heli. And I have to be honest, I'm very happy that we have a blade holder included along with this heli, because sometimes these companies don't give you a blade holder, and as a heli pilot, that's one of the things you want when you're transporting your heli to the field, to keep your blades straight. Now, putting the heli in the box just requires you to move this, and if you press the tab on the side right here on the heli body, it will release the tail and reveal where it connects to the heli to power the brushless motor on the very end. When you get to the field, just go ahead and put it back into place and you'll hear it snap, and you should see this lever go down and lock into place. Then you're ready to fly. And in the back of this heli, we're running the newest firmware on the H1 flight controller here. You can see the GPS wire comes down here, plugs in right here, and the GPS hides just underneath this canopy for a return to home. This V3 version of the heli also has a newly upgraded head design. It has a flybarless head unit on here with a combination of injection molded plastic and aluminum. So that's kind of important. When you go in to crash, you want to make sure that you have minimal links in here to deal with. These will pop off. They are made to pop off of the ball links and save you a lot of time and trouble trying to rebalance this entire head system. You can get extra links from Flywing. You have to find them on their website. I'll put some links down below for those links. And we also have what looks like plastic blade grips on here. These are not metal blade grips, but it is nice that something in here, like I said, has to give during the crash, and you shouldn't have any real damage to these unless you're going for a really hard crash. Now, one of the most important things that you need to tighten up on any heli before you go out to fly is what we call the Jesus bolt. And this is a bolt that goes through the entire top of the head assembly. If this pops off during flight, you may have a total catastrophe and failure. Very important bolt. You want to go over this entire head block with the driver and the body of the helicopter itself. Like I said before your maiden flight, that is so important. Now, on most RC helis, you can remove the entire canopy pretty quickly to get to the main body, to be able to do inspections and go over this heli with a driver and tighten up all the bolts on the body and the main frame of the heli. But this one, it has a little bit of a hard to remove canopy, and the reason that is because it has 4 bolts holding it on, 2 bolts on each side hold it on, and once you release those bolts, this front part will come off easily. But when you're trying to take this main canopy off the top, there's only a small hole here to get this entire head assembly through. You cannot remove this main canopy without taking off the main blades, and putting it back on was a chore. Now, if we flip the FW450 over and you look in the very back of the heli, you'll see where the receiver is. This is the FlySky FSIA-6B receiver, and it looks like they have one servo tab going in there, which brings all of the different channels into the flight controller. That's kind of nice to see that that supports that. We also have extended range antennas coming off the bottom, which are already taped to the side of the heli's main body. And while we're under here, you can see that this heli is powered by a direct drive brushless motor pinion connection to the main shaft of this heli's head system. Now, this part of the review is going to be the most important part if you're an RC heli beginner. Putting your blades on is super critical. So many guys get to the field and they put their blades on backwards. It is very possible to put these on backwards. I saw another reviewer say there's only one way to put the blades on. Well, guys tend to get that wrong, and I want to show you in this review how to make sure you have them right. When you're flying an RC heli, 99% of the time the blades go clockwise. So that means that the leading edge has to face forward as this rotates around clockwise. That way, that will lift off the ground and come back to the ground when you put positive and negative pitch into the transmitter. The way you tell is you look at the front, the thick side of the cord on the blade is the leading edge, the back side is thinner, and this is called the trailing edge. This needs to rotate around in this fashion, and the same for this blade on this blade grip. When you put them on, they will look like they're opposite directions, but when they rotate around, that's what's going to create lift for you, and they will be on correctly. Now, one of my favorite things about this RC heli as an RC heli pilot myself is the fact that this one breaks down super quick. Once you get the blades off, it's super easy to press that tab on this side and remove the tail, and put it in the transport box. One thing about the transport box that I didn't like, however, was that this head and body assembly doesn't go in with the blades on the head. That's kind of a bummer to me. And wow, look at that. Everything fits nicely inside the box. Once you have the blades off of the main head of the heli, the body fits nicely in here. The FlySky transmitter fits here, the LiPo here, and we have the battery charger here. The blade grip holder fits down here, as well as your Allen tools go in this slot right here. So the blades tuck neatly in underneath the head of the heli here. They have their own spot as well. And one thing I have to say, I wish that this was more of a transport case than a storage case. Most of the advanced heli pilots out there, once they put their heli in a case, they want to be able to keep the blades on the head of the heli when they're going to the field. It's nice to be able to take the tail off, but if you have to remove the blades before you go fly it every single time, that's kind of a bummer. Most recreational heli pilots like to be able to leave the blades on inside the box. So that's one tip I would give Flywing for the next version of this, or if they decide to release maybe a new case for the Flywing FW450L. So that is my review of the V3. And guys, I would honestly give this one about a 4.8 out of 5 because it feels safe to fly it. That was my takeaway for today's review and my maiden flight of my FW450L. I think that it flies and it feels safe in the air in GPS mode. So as a long time, over 20-year heli pilot, it does feel very nice to fly and it doesn't give me anxiety. Some of my older, larger 700 class size helis, when I would spool up on 6S power, it gave me tremendous anxiety, mainly because if I crashed it, that was my credit card suffering because of that crash. So it's really important to feel nice and safe and feel like you're having fun in the RC hobby. And that's what it's all about for me, is having fun. So I would classify this as a fun flyer with a little bit of GPS backup return to home if you need it. So have fun with this one. You can check it out in the link down below. It does benefit the channel if you grab one, and let me know what you think of yours down in the comments below, or if you want to get one. Stay tuned and please subscribe on the channel, guys, for more RC reviews coming up. I'm Justin Davis of Drone Camps, and I will see you on the next one.